It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Hello there. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. How are ya? Happy July. We got two guests today. My first guest is Ari Herstand. Ari is a musician and he's also an author of a best-selling book called How to Make It in the New Music Business. And I was very intrigued by that title of the book, so we got him on the show. It's a very interesting conversation. For those of you that have followed the show, you know that I'm not a big fan of streaming, but Ari may have assuaged my opinion somewhat on that, based on what he told me about how many more indie artists are actually making a living on the streaming, and he taught me about playlists and things that I did not know. So thank you, Ari, for that. I appreciate it. He will be followed by Austin Davis. Austin Davis is a poet and a student activist, currently studying creative writing at Arizona State University. He is the author of a couple of books. First one is called The World Isn't the Size of Our Neighborhood Anymore. And he's got another book out called Celestial Nightlight, which will be released, or was released, on July 7th. He will also share an excerpt from that book at the end of his interview, so stick around for that. Our video production studio is done, and now we are simply testing everything. I hope to have a first video production show out in 2 weeks. I hate to say when because I never know, but we were hoping for mid-July, and that's probably not going to happen. So let's shoot for the end of July at this point. Fingers crossed. We will be right back with Ari Herstand.
Hurry, Bullwinkle! The show's about to start!
I'm coming as fast as I can.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Ooh, don't know my own strength.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Ari Herstand. Hey, Ari, how are you?
Hey, Douglas. Good to be with you today. I'm doing all right.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. When my producer sent me your bio, I said I immediately wanted to have this guy on the show because of the title of your book, How to Make It in the New Music Business. I'm also a musician, in case you don't know, and I've been in this for a long time, although I don't play live anymore. But when you say the new music business, I'm assuming you mean post-digital, correct?
Yes. So I like to say, because everybody always asks me, so what's the difference between the old music business and the new music business? And, you know, everybody kind of understands what the old music business is about. Yes, this is pre-digital. This is pretty much in the era of really just kind of one way to kind of make a career happen, and that was you got signed by a record label, you went on tour, you got songs on the radio,
right? And
really the only gauge of success in the old music business was if you sold a ton of records, then you were successful. And the new music business is very, very different. There are 100 ways to make it in the new music business, and most of those actually don't have to do with getting signed to a record label anymore. And so the definition of success is very different in the new music business today.
Well, I kind of break it into three parts because I'm old enough to be pre-MTV. So
sure.
MTV, MTV was like one step, and then digital was another huge step.
Mm-hmm.
I think what changed, though, between pre-MTV and post-MTV was that it was more important what you looked like rather than what kind of music you were putting out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I hear that completely. But I think the biggest difference is that was all still about selling records. So you're absolutely correct in the sense when MTV came out, it mattered what you looked like, and you kind of had to sell an image,
Right.
not just a sound. And it was like the full package, and that's what we were selling. But again, it was still about selling.
Correct.
And now we're in an era where it's not really, it doesn't matter, well, for one, who's buying records anymore. So we're in a post-sales industry is really what we're in right now. And as we're in streaming, and kind of all the numbers and, digital numbers and digital money is coming from streaming revenue, it's a completely different industry. So it's really not even about sales anymore. And whether you're selling a package, a sound, an image, and to be honest, we're kind of even getting back to it just being about the music in some respects. In the sense, when you think about Spotify, for instance, there are very few visual components to that, and people are discovering music on playlists like they used to discover music on the radio. And it's, yes, of course, we have YouTube, and you can discover the music videos and all that. But we're seeing careers being launched just from people getting included on popular Spotify playlists.
Well, that's very encouraging. I'm happy to hear that, because I think it should be about the music, and not about what you look like. And it's so funny to take a look back when you look at what the bands looked like in the 70s versus what they looked like in the 80s. It was just it's so different. And I have to laugh. But the one thing I want to say about streaming that I don't like, I don't mind digital download, but streaming I don't like because you basically get a penny a stream. That's kind of the going rate. You would have to
half a penny,
half a penny, whatever, right? Somebody would have to play your song 100 times to get the same amount of money as one download. Now, I don't think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I just said I don't think that my favorite song in the whole world, maybe I've played 100 times. But the point being is that somebody downloads your music for $1.29 a song, one track. They can play it once, they can download it and delete it, or they can play it 1 billion times, but you still got that dollar, right? And with the streaming, I just don't like it because the numbers just don't add up. When people bought an album, you got paid. It didn't matter how many times they played it, if they played it at all. You got paid.
So, I'm going to push back on this a little bit because when someone bought an album, oftentimes the artist never got paid. The record labels got paid. And similarly, when they downloaded the song, the record labels got paid, and the artist rarely ever got paid, to be honest. The record labels took 85% of all that money, and they rarely ever even gave the 15% to the artist because of the countless expenses and the money that they said was being allocated toward that artist that went to the expense sheet. And the artist actually never even made that 15% until all the expenses were recouped. And oftentimes, the labels would take out various people to dinners for thousands of dollars and all that. But just getting to the actual dollars and cents of what you're talking about, because it's a fair point. The thing that a lot of people aren't really thinking about or actually don't even know about is that just last year, Spotify came out and said that there are 9,000 artists, independent artists, who are making a living just on Spotify revenue. 9,000 artists making a living just on Spotify revenue. A living, not just some money, a living. And so you think about that, it's like, wait a minute, how is that possible if you're only getting a half a penny a stream? Do they all have millions of fans? And the answer is no. Actually, most of these don't have millions of fans. Some of them don't even have tens of thousands of fans. So how is that possible? The way that this is possible is that, and it's a really interesting new era that we're in right now, is that people are listening. The difference is when a fan listened to a song on the radio, that artist never got paid. So you're getting millions of people potentially listening to these songs, and the artist is never getting paid for the radio. Now, if they wrote the song, they're getting a little bit of money when it gets played on the radio, but the artist never got the money. So the singer or the band, they never got paid when the song is played on the radio. Now, every time a person hears a song or listens to a song, so if they're using Spotify as their radio now to just discover music and listen to music, every time they get a spin or play, the artist is getting paid. And so, like I mentioned, playlists before, when artists are included on playlists, popular playlists, sometimes these playlists have hundreds of thousands of followers. Sometimes the playlists have millions of followers. And these followers, they're listening to the playlist because they really like the playlist. And so sometimes they may not even actually know who the artist is of the song that they really like on this playlist. They may not even know the name of the song. They just love this playlist, and they're listening to it. And then some people who really love this song, just like when you hear a song on the radio, sometimes you're like, I tune into my favorite radio station. I don't know most of the songs that are played, but sometimes there's that one song that I really, really love. And so then I dig in and I find out who that song is. And I think, I discover it and maybe I'll buy the record or something like that. The difference here is that every time the song gets played on that playlist, that artist is getting paid. So we're seeing actually thousands of artists who never would have actually been able to make a living before in the old industry or just with digital downloads or sales, actually making a living. And a lot of my friends and a lot of artists are actually building their careers in this way right now.
Well, okay, your point is well taken, and I appreciate that because that was something I actually didn't know about Spotify.
Yep.
Going back to your earlier point, barring the record label ripoff, an artist who is an indie who puts their song out for download at $1.29, I mean, I think I get about 90 cents back. So, I mean, that's not bad.
Exactly. And yes, sometimes, Apple takes their 30% and then you get the rest,
right,
depending on what distributor you use, for sure.
Okay. So, I mean, you do get, but you would have to, my point is just the mathematics. Now, the whole thing with the playlist, that's great because that gets your song out to all sorts of other places that you wouldn't necessarily have done yourself. People can just add you to playlists, right? You don't have to.
Exactly.
You don't have to do anything, right?
Right.
So,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, can I ask you how old you are? Would you mind
I'm
telling?
35. Just turned 35.
35. Okay. So we're kind of a different generation of, but it doesn't
Sure.
it doesn't really matter that much. I mean, music is music, in terms of the playing. I mean, I've played with guys who are in their 70s, and I've played with guys that were 15 and 16. So it didn't really matter. The only thing that matters is our perspective to where we grew up in this industry. And you look at somebody like, I don't know, just Paul McCartney, for example, who went through the whole thing, from vinyl records to 8-track tapes to cassettes to CDs. He saw the whole transformation. Do you think it's better? Do you think this is a better deal? I mean, you said 9,000 artists are making a living. I don't know that there were that many making a living in the 70s. I don't know.
I strongly doubt that. I highly doubt it. I think this is better personally. The main reason being that the playing field has become level. It's almost kind of democratized, whereas before there were a select few that the labels chose who were going to have careers. And even when they chose them, I mean, there's an interesting statistic, and this even was from about 10 years ago, even before streaming took off, and it's even lower now, is that 98% of artists that get signed to major record deals fail. 98% fail, meaning that they don't actually recoup the cost of their advance, and the labels drop them before they're able to put out a second album. So they don't actually make any money. That's 98% of all artists that get signed by labels. And you have to be good to get signed by a label. And so, there's a misnomer out there that everybody thinks, oh, you get signed to a major record deal, you've made it. I disagree. I think that you've made it when you're supporting the kind of lifestyle you'd like to live, doing what you love. I think that, personally, that's what making it means to me. And it's funny to me that a lot of people outside the music industry, only think of making it in music as superstardom. It's like, what other industry do you have to be a superstar to make it? And I I think that I always push back on that. I'm like, there's thousands and thousands of artists right now that are making it in music and you've never heard their names, and that's okay. They're making a living. They're doing something they love. I think that's just wonderful, and that's making it.
A couple of points. The live performances now seem to be where many artists are making more money than they used to, because I can remember going to concerts in the 70s and they were $10. And the concert was just a way to promote the album. Now it's sort of the other way around, isn't it? Because the concert tickets can be, for major artists can be hundreds of dollars. And they're making more money there because they're making less in the album sales.
Yes and no. I mean, it really depends on what artists you look at. I can give you examples both ways. I can give you examples of artists like we were talking about before who make their livings just on digital revenue. Just on digital streaming and revenue through that, and actually never tour. And they're making 6, sometimes 7 figures making music at home.
Wow.
And they never tour. So, there's that. But then, of course, yes, there's absolutely artists that are making a very large amount touring. And that's where a lot of artists make the majority of their income. But there isn't a one-size-fits-all model anymore. And so there are artists who go on, kind of mid-level artists who are touring, and maybe they're charging $20 tickets. Then, the superstars that we all hear about, that's where you're hearing about, these entire operations that are charging hundreds of dollars of tickets because, there's promoters and there's agents and managers and crew and just the market kind of dictates that. I mean, what came out last year, what Ticketmaster has started to do, they've started pricing their tickets it's kind of a responsive pricing and reactive pricing. It's similar how plane tickets operate, in that when there's higher demand, the ticket price can raise in real time, and then when there's lower demand, they get lowered in real time. And so there isn't even, like, for some of the biggest concerts, they're not even set ticket prices anymore. It's kind of based on the demand, and so it's a whole new industry.
Well, that's very interesting too. I didn't know that about Ticketmaster. The one thing I found kind of ironic, though, when I've been to see, smaller name artists, is that people won't necessarily pick up their CD through Amazon, but they will buy it at the door when they go see them at a concert. And I always thought that was funny, because they will have their CDs and T-shirts and everything out in the lobby of the venue. And people will buy them when they go to see them, but they won't buy them, beforehand on Amazon. I just found that strange.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely the case. And it actually, to me, it makes a lot of sense because when you're at the concert, you're having this magical experience with everybody else there and with the band, and you want a souvenir to remember that concert by. And so a lot of times fans are buying CDs or T-shirts or records or whatever it is at the merch table as a souvenir from this wonderful experience that they had that night, to just kind of remember that night by, but also to support the artist. And they feel that when you buy it directly from the artist at their merch table, they feel that most of that money is going to be going directly to that artist and that they're supporting the artist, versus when you buy it on Amazon or anywhere, you don't really know how the money is being broken up.
That's one thing that has changed, because back in the day, they never sold records at the concerts. They sold T-shirts and posters, but record albums, no way. So I think the labels had that locked up, for sure.
Yeah, it was harder to scan those and to keep track of all of that, and the mechanisms have definitely evolved. So you're seeing even major label artists selling records at the shows today because of the digitized point-of-sale systems, where they can track every sale in real time and report that to the charts and to Billboard charts and SoundScan and stuff like that.
Yeah, bootleg records was a big business back in the 70s. That's definitely true. Well, so we've mentioned labels a couple of times, so I want to throw that question at you. What is the point of an artist chasing a major label? It's a two-part question. What is the point of an artist chasing a major label contract? And what can the major labels do for an artist that an artist can't do on their own?
Sure. So the biggest appeal to major labels right now is the money. The major labels are still able to write a fat check up front, and the infrastructure that they can provide. So that's very appealing to artists, and artists are still sometimes giving up all of their rights, and like they always had to do, and that's still the case, to get the big check up front. And you know, you have to think about it. A lot of artists are struggling, and when you're struggling, and someone comes to you, or you know, and they're saying, well, hey, you don't have to struggle anymore. Here's $100,000 check. That's very appealing. Whereas, you know, maybe if they had just grinded it out another year or two, they would be making that $100,000 plus and retain all their ownership. But the other appealing thing is the infrastructure. They have various departments. They have marketing, and they have distribution, and they have playlisting and sync departments, and all these various departments that they will win the artist over to when they want to try to sign them. Now, that all being said, I point back to the statistic of that 98% of artists that sign to major labels will fail. So even though every label, I would like to believe, has good intentions, and the A&R representatives and the people, they're all people there, the people have good intentions when they sign these bands, the fact of the matter is their business model is built on superstardom. And if you don't become a superstar, then they don't care about you, and they're not going to, they don't develop artists like they used to. You know, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they were developing talent. So they would sign artists who they believed in. Maybe they didn't have a large fan base, but they believed in their music, and they believed in that artist. Now they're only really signing artists who have already proven that they are successful in some respect. And so, you know, most labels aren't looking at artists who don't have 100,000 Instagram followers or 10 million streams on Spotify. I mean, that's just kind of the fact. And until you're able to kind of build a career on your own, labels aren't even really looking at you these days. So any young artist who is thinking, well, I just need a label because I need some money and I want the infrastructure and that's going to help. I'm like, okay, but labels aren't looking at you until you build up your career on your own. And so that's, you know, that's a lot of what I talk about in the book. Is like, whether you want a label or not, it doesn't really matter, because you have to build up your career on your own before a label's even going to look at you. And then once you built up your career and you have a sustainable career, then you can decide if you think a label is going to be the best next step for you or not, or just keep going at it independently. And so that's pretty much, you know, what the entire book teaches artists to do, is how to build their careers up in this new industry on their own.
It's funny because I've had this show for over 5 years now, and I've interviewed many indie musicians and artists, and not one of them has said, oh, we're really looking for a major label deal. I mean,
right.
Not a single one. So I thought that was pretty interesting. You know, they're all at various levels of success. A couple of the bands that I interviewed were, I would call them working class. You know, they might be making $100,000 a year, which is fine, which is great, you know, for doing what you love to do. But exactly. Nobody was interested in a label deal.
Well, I think, you know, it's mostly the horror stories have come out, and we've all heard that our friends and people that we know have gotten taken advantage of and kind of pushed over by the labels. And so it's not as appealing anymore when we can kind of do it on our own and make it work for us on our own.
You said that, what was it, 98% of people that get signed fail?
Yes, 98% of artists that sign to major record labels, and that's honestly even higher now. That was from about 8 years ago. I've heard from people at labels now it's closer to 99% of artists that sign to major record labels will fail. They will get dropped, and they won't make the money to recoup those costs.
Yeah, I know one guy. He had that horror story. He got signed to Sony, Universal, and I think it was $100,000 check. And nothing ever came out of it. And he ended up owing Sony $100,000, which he didn't have. And so they had to go to court, and it was nasty, you know. So artists beware, that check is not a gift. If the labels give you a check, it is not a gift. It's a loan. And the vig is very steep. It can be, you know.
Yep.
Tremendous.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about music itself. I saw an interview not too long ago with Ian Anderson from former Jethro Tull.
Jethro Tull, sure.
He seems to think that it's all been done in terms of, like, there isn't some new sound waiting to be discovered. He says it's just rehash of everything for the past 200 years. What do you think to that?
Sure. I mean, all music is derivative, and I would probably argue that in the 70s as well, when Jethro Tull was coming out, I'd say the same thing. It's just like, everything's already been done. What are you doing? And if he's like, well, I'm doing something innovative, it's like, sure, it is innovative, but everything that you're doing has come from somebody else, and you could point to those influences, and you know, most of it, all music has come from those who came before. Now, I think just in the sheer fact of technological innovation, there are new styles and sounds and new techniques and new music that's coming out that just was not even possible prior. And so there are sounds that are coming out that were just not physically able to be made 20 years ago. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing these days. It's a lot of electronic music, a lot of programming, a lot of people experimenting with all of this new technology and getting really creative in how they can create these new sounds and actually making some really cool music that really was not possible before. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters if it's been done before or not. I think it matters if you can connect with an audience, and if somebody is going to deeply connect and resonate with your song, and if it's meaningful to them. It doesn't matter if it's just a vocal and an acoustic guitar, or if it's a 90-piece orchestra, or if it's just instruments, electronic instruments done in a computer. I think, you know, at the end of the day is are you connecting with an audience, and is a fan resonating with your music in a deep spiritual sense? And I think that has always been the most important part of music.
How do you feel about some artists who get up on stage and lip sync, and somebody in the back has an iPad that's controlling the sound you're hearing? How do you feel about that?
Lip syncing is something that was pretty prevalent about 10 years ago, and, you know, Ashley Simpson got caught on Saturday Night Live when she came out and lip synced and got caught red-handed. I'm not seeing that as much anymore, of actually people pretending to sing and not actually sing. Now, what we are seeing quite a lot are singers who come out and maybe they'll have a DJ, or maybe they'll just hit play and on their laptop, and they're singing over tracks. Now, oftentimes, you know, I don't have a problem with that, because what is assumed is that this is their creation, and it's like a presentation of their art. And so it's almost like, even, you know, a painter who has an art showing, people are coming to see that artwork, and they're not expecting the artist to actually create the art in front of their eyes necessarily every time. It's a presentation of their artwork. Yeah,
that's a good point. It's similarly with the film.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
exactly.
A film is a copy of some acting that was done in a studio somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And you know, so it's just about what are the intentions, and what is the experience that you're looking to have. Some people like going to the movies, and some people like going to the theater to see plays. And some people like to see rock shows where every note is created right in front of them. And some people are fine seeing a pop show where 90% of the music is pre-recorded and you're there for the pyrotechnics or whatnot, or the dancing, and it's kind of just, exactly. There's no right or wrong. It's just kind of what are people, what kind of experience would they like to have for themselves?
Okay, we got to kind of wrap this up, but I want to hit on Uncanceled Music Festival. That sounds cool.
Sure.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So right when COVID-19 kind of shut everything down, and it was really when the Los Angeles mayor, because that's where I live, came out and kind of gave the order that all restaurants, bars, and music venues had to shut down, and we were one of the first, and then everyone kind of followed suit and started shutting everything down. A few friends and I kind of sprung into action. He said, well, live music, that is a large revenue stream for a lot of artists and music venues. And so a couple friends, Andrew Lieb and Ashley Mayetta and I, we got together this concept of Uncanceled Music Festival, which is a live-streamed festival, basically a concert series where we had artists from all over the world perform from their bedrooms through their laptops, and we were selling tickets to their shows, and a portion of the proceeds went to the Recording Academy's Music Cares Fund, which supported any artist in need, so anyone could apply for those funds to help them get by. And then over 70% of the money went directly to the artists and the music venues. And the music venues we brought them in to help curate and book the talent, because music venues were going to be struggling during this time, and they're the lifeblood of local music scenes. And so we got independent local music venues to book the talent, and they would make a portion of the money. The artists would make a portion of the money, and people were buying tickets to these shows, and they were 45-minute shows online. You could watch from your bedroom, from your phone, from your laptop, and these artists, there's a chat box, and so you could interact with the artist. And we had some pretty large names like Colby Calais. She performed our festival. We had Betty Who and Brian Fallon, Waxahachie. We had hundreds of artists, and the festival actually made over $100,000 in a week and a half.
Wow. And
with the vast majority going directly to artists, venues, and then the Music Cares organization. And so that was kind of something that we set up to just try to help out artists and music venues now that kind of live music has been shut down.
Oh, that's great. Okay, Ari, well, I'm sorry we ran out of time. It was really nice talking to you. This was a lot of fun. Best of luck. I guess real quickly, what are you doing at this moment? What's your project right now?
I'm working on a new record. I'm actually recording this remotely through the wonders of technology. My producer is in his studio, and I'm in my home studio. And
that's great.
Through Zoom and other various technologies, I'm making a full record right now. So that'll be out later this year.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, I'm in Las Vegas, and my producer's in London. And so we have a lot of files going back and forth. It's pretty fun. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was great. Great talking to you. Best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you so much. Hey, this is Ari Herstand, and you're listening to the Douglas Coleman Show, and this is my new song, Retrospect.
Stepping into sunlight in the morning dew. Something feels different, it's now coming into view. With every passing season, like a seed it grows. I find another reason why I had to let you go. Just reflections of our past. In retrospect, we gave it all we had. In retrospect, it was more than enough. But as we grew, we lost touch of what's been done. It's all the small reminders on my morning drive. Our story hasn't written the book of you and I, just reflections of our past. In retrospect, we gave it all we had. In retrospect, it was more than enough. But as we grew, we lost touch of what we knew. In retrospect. We gave it all we had. In retrospect, it was more than enough. But as we grew, we lost touch with what we knew. In retrospect, we had it all.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps, record producer. This is my story about Elton John, working with him in those early years, going back to 1967 at Dick James, all the amazing tours, those first recordings, going through to Rocket Records. And it's an amazing story about his incredible rise to stardom and my part in that. So look forward to taking you on that journey. So here we go.
Yeah, and to order this great audio CD, please just email me at stuartepps@talk21.com. That's Stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T, Epps, E-P-P-S, at talk, T-A-L-K, 21 in figures.com. Stuart Epps at talk21.com. Email me and I'll give you all the details for buying this brilliant audio disc. Thank you. Bye.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of the Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
Tired of living in a culture of lies, fake news, and alternative facts? The Pro-Truth Pledge reverses the tide of lies by calling on politicians, and everyone else, to commit to truth-oriented behaviors. The pledge asks signees to commit to 12 behaviors that research in behavioral science shows lead to truthfulness, such as clarifying one's opinions and the facts, citing one's sources, and celebrating people who update their beliefs toward the truth. Private citizens who sign the pledge get the benefit of contributing to a more truth-oriented society. Public figures get more substantive rewards for signing the pledge in the form of positive media and public recognition. The pledge crowdsources the truth by asking volunteers to evaluate the statements of public figures who sign the pledge. Take the pledge, demand that your elected representatives do so, and encourage your friends to take it at protruthpledge.org.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to The Douglas Coleman Show, Austin Davis. Hi, Austin. How are you?
Hey, Douglas. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Doing all right. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Your bio is really short, but I do like it. I particularly like the parts of hot cups of Irish breakfast tea. I mean, that's absolutely my favorite. I'm drinking them right now. And
you know, it's funny. That's what I'm drinking right now as well. A cup of
nothing
hot
like,
Irish breakfast tea, yeah.
Nothing like that green box just to get you going, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all good stuff. Let's see. You are a student. You're a poet. You're studying creative writing at ASU. Where is that?
Yep, I go to Arizona State University.
Arizona.
So that's in Tempe. Yeah, it's pretty close to Phoenix.
Actually, I knew somebody a long time ago that went to that school. Is it a good school?
I really like it. Yeah, it's very big, though. The cool thing that I've noticed, though, is, I'm in the creative writing program. So each of my classes they're very small. So I have, 10-person classes, and I know we're all in the same classes together. So I've kind of found a small liberal arts college experience on this really big campus, which has been kind of weird and interesting and cool for me.
So kind of like a college within a college, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. We have our own little writing community, pretty much.
Oh, that's cool. How long have you been writing poetry? Since you were a kid, or?
Yeah, well, I started by writing fiction. I was writing fiction when I was a very young boy, and I used to staple these little cardstock chapbooks together and give them out to all my family and friends, but I think I started writing poetry when I was around 12 after I took a creative writing class for the first time.
Do poems have to rhyme? Is that a rule or no?
Not at all. Yeah, no, actually none of my poems rhyme. All my poems are free verse. So okay. Yeah, I don't do the whole rhyming thing, but I it's cool if you do.
I'm kind of ignorant about poetry, but it just always seemed to me that everything I ever read rhymed, but
right, yeah.
That could be just an age difference. I think when I was in school, all poems did rhyme.
Right. I think it's the new contemporary poetry. It's a newer style that, mid 1900s is when it really got popular, of just free verse poetry without any limitations on rhyme scheme or anything.
So then what constitutes a poem versus a short story?
That's an interesting question, honestly. I don't know. I mean, I think of a poem, for me at least, as a short story condensed down into its barest emotion, So in poetry, you put the most thought and intensity into each word possible. So each word is the perfect word. That's kind of how I think of a poem.
All right, I like that. Rather than with a story, you get very long-winded and you explain everything.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like at the end of the story you've experienced, or at the end of a poem you've experienced something. In the same way, if you've read a story, you've experienced something, but it's all condensed down into one feeling, one experience. So I don't know. That's kind of what I fell in love with poetry.
It's compressed, right?
It is compressed. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Okay. Now I'm just trying to figure out in my head, because I'm not a literary scholar by any stretch of the imagination. But I was a TV kid. I mean, we grew up watching TV, and I started reading later in life, but as a kid, I couldn't read anything. I just didn't want to. It says here you're the author of The World Isn't the Size of Our Neighborhood Anymore. What is that?
Yes. That is my my newest book. It just came out in March from Weasel Press, and that's my latest collection. It came out in March, and I went on tour up until the coronavirus pandemic really started to take full force, and I had to stop.
Oh, on your book tour, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a drag. The pandemic has kind of affected everybody, particularly performing artists and musicians, and So tell us about the book. What is the book about?
Well, I like to say that it's kind of a love letter to growing up. All the good parts and all the bad parts, and every time you had to grow up a little too fast. That's kind of the best way I can describe it, I suppose. But, there are poems in there about love and heartbreak, and there are also some poems about masculinity and toxic masculinity and gun violence. That's something I've been very interested with lately, is the gun violence epidemic in America. So, just kind of moving through many of those different themes, and kind of with this collection, I really wanted it to be cohesive. So each poem leads into the next in such a way where at the end of the book, I wanted the whole collection to feel like, as we were talking about before, kind of a full story, but made up of poems.
Oh, okay, so it's a collection of poems.
It is a collection of poems, yeah.
All right. You mentioned something called toxic masculinity. What exactly is that? Define that for me.
Toxic masculinity. Let me think. I think that it's kind of just the representation of, traditional and stereotypical masculine norms, like men can't be emotional, or, men always have to be strong and we can't show weakness. I think that's something that's very prominent in our society. And I think that, I for one, I paint my nails, and I don't always portray myself as the, stereotypical man, or like strong man. So I don't know. I was just really interested in how my experiences as a kid and with other men who kind of taught me I have to be this strong, non-feeling man, how that kind of affected me growing up, and how I've kind of moved away from that and kind of, had my own opinions about who I want to be, I guess.
Well, painting your nails doesn't mean anything. That's very rock star. Yeah, they've been doing that since the 70s.
Right, but I've had a lot of people who, have people definitely make fun of me for doing it, or especially when I was a kid. So that's kind of what I mean. If you're a kid and you're in high school or something and you paint your nails pink, there's going to be, from my experience, someone's going to make fun of you. And that really got to me. So I wanted to kind of write poems about that and hopefully help some other kids who were feeling kind of like that know that they're not alone in how they're feeling,
Well, Well, I think that's good. I mean, I think people have a right to express themselves however they want, as long as it doesn't infringe on anybody else.
Right, for sure.
On your Instagram, there was a picture of you, I think, doing something helping the homeless.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that.
That's probably my list. Yeah, well, so I work for Arizona Jews for Justice, and I run the homeless outreach program. We really just started it back in March. That's really when we went full force into this, but we have this other project called the Mask Project, where we have we pay immigrant women in our community to sew face masks for us, and then I and my boss we deliver them to the Navajo Nation and our homeless community and just those who are vulnerable right now. So that was a picture of me out in the zone, which I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that place, but it's right in the middle of central Phoenix. It's about 5 blocks, and it's the biggest tent city in Phoenix. There's about 600 people living out in the street there. And it's just been a very humbling experience for me, because I've seen a lot of pain, a lot of heartbreak, with these people, and I've gotten to know them very well. They all know me by name, and I know them by name as well, and we just have a very, very nice relationship now. So I kind of want to help our homeless community in the same way I'd help a family member now.
Oh, well, that's nice. You mentioned the Navajo Nation. I've driven through there a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised to read that the coronavirus was particularly bad in the Navajo Nation, simply because it was so sparse. I mean, this wasn't like New York City where people are just on top of each other. I mean, there's miles of nothing, and then you see like a couple little houses here and there. And I couldn't understand how the virus got so bad in the Navajo Nation. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think they really, from what I've seen, they have a lot less resources than we do. So, they don't have running water for the most part. So I think a lot of it has to do with probably trading goods and bringing water to each other and stuff. And I think right now, especially, there are more and more people. So it's getting, from what I've heard and seen, we haven't actually made a trip up there yet, but we have people who live in the Navajo Nation who come and meet us, and we give them supplies, but or they live down here and I meet them somewhere, but that's kind of what I've heard. There's more and more people coming in there.
Okay, well, that's possible. I mean, it is an open range, if you will. I mean, there's not a big fence or a wall around the whole thing. So
right. Well, I think it's on lockdown now, but I think I read last time there's about like 4,800 cases, something like that, and I think it's over 100 deaths so far in the Navajo Nation, something like that.
One thing I did like about going through the Navajo Nation was I got a great dream catcher that I bought.
Oh,
it was a wonderful thing.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, the biggest problem, I mean, I think especially in our country with the coronavirus, but especially in the Navajo Nation, I think it's just, the virus spreads so quickly. I don't think there's more people going in. I don't think that's the problem. I think that just when it spreads to the older population, it's just harder for the older population to recover from it. I think that's the biggest problem, because, no one's going in there because they have it on lockdown, so I think it's just when it spreads to the older population, that's when it gets dangerous, or especially dangerous.
Have you been tested?
I have not. It's been really difficult to get tested here. They have free testing, but from what I've seen, it's all been booked. So I'm trying to get tested Friday, because I go out to the homeless zone like twice, 2 or 3 times a week. So I'm at pretty high risk to have it, So I'd like to get tested, but I don't have any symptoms. So I can't get a doctor's note or anything, So I just kind of have to wait until there's an opening at one of the free places.
Well, you're not in the high risk group. I mean, you're young. How old are you? 20?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm 20. I'm not at risk to, die from it or anything, but I'm at risk to, maybe have it without knowing it and spread it to someone who would be at danger.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean that's one of the real tragedies of this particular virus is somebody young can give it to 50 people.
Right. Yeah. And from what I've seen, there's a lot of people who, before the last week, were still going to bars and still going to, parties and stuff like that. And that's where it gets really scary, I think. But our governor shut down bars and stuff like that just a couple days ago, so which is good. I mean, it's really bad in Arizona.
Arizona is one of those states that the thing is just taken off. Yeah, it was like,
oh yeah,
Arizona, California, North Carolina, Florida is real bad.
Yeah, Florida and Texas as well.
Texas, right. Now, did you guys open early? I mean, were you on lockdown and then started to reopen too soon, perhaps? Is that?
Yeah, we were never really on full lockdown, which I think was the problem. I mean, there was like about a month probably where most people were locked down, and I think most restaurants and stores were shut down as well. But I do think, everything opened up a little too early. I don't think bars should have opened to that extent at all, because it was still, cases were still going up when bars opened. So I think that was one of the big issues.
Bars are a problem. Massage parlors, another one.
Yeah, right.
Definitely needs to stay closed for a while. And, the only thing I wonder about is people talk about, and I'm sure you've heard this term called the new normal.
Yeah.
And once we get through this and we go back to, well, you can't say going back to the new normal. We go to the new normal. How is that going to affect concerts and things? Because I really feel bad for musicians and performing artists, because those are the sort of the bulk of my listeners on the show, and that's how they make their living. And
right, yeah.
The idea that people are going to go into jam-packed venues again and be all over each other and stage diving, and I mean, I can't see that happening anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny for me to think about, because about a month before all this got really bad, and right before my tour, my friends and I used to go to these house shows in Tempe. I don't know if you've ever been to a house show, but it's you stand in some guy's crowded kitchen and a band plays in the living room, and there's just a bunch of people, and you're just in some guy's crappy house, and there's loud music and drinks and stuff, and everyone's just having a good time, but you're all so close together because there's about 100 people in this one little tiny room. And it's interesting to think right now, there's no way in hell I would do that, so I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going to happen to the performance scene. I mean, I remember when I was doing my shows, because I did readings at bars and libraries and coffee shops and stuff. There's a lot of people sitting next to each other and stuff like that, but it definitely wasn't a concert. But I think with poetry reading, since there's less people, you can spread it out more easily. But I don't know. I mean, the biggest thing that I miss is hugging people. I'm a very touchy. I don't know. I miss hugging my friends and family and stuff.
Well, yeah, I think that's going to be another one. I mean, people are going to look twice even if you put your hand out to shake their hand.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
And, I mean, there are some cultures that they kiss, and it's just, I don't know. I hate that idea that we're all going to be repelled by every new person we meet. I think that's a horrible idea. I guess it remains to be seen what the new normal is going to look like. We're not there yet.
We still have a lot of time, Yeah. This thing's not over by a long shot, so.
No, it looks like it's just starting at this point.
Oh, I know. I mean, especially in Arizona, I thought it was scary a couple months ago, but this is way scarier for me, at least. I don't know.
So what's up for the 4th of July there? Are they going to be doing fireworks, or is that all off now?
I hope not. I mean, I imagine people will be, but I don't think you're allowed to. You can't be in a big group. That's one of the new rules as well. You can't congregate, and I don't remember what the exact number is, but yeah, I don't know. I imagine some people are going to have parties and stuff, and some people are going to have fireworks go off, but there's no organized events, there's I remember last year I went to Tempe Town Lake, which is by ASU. It's a big lake, and hundreds of people come, and they have this big fireworks show, and it's like a yearly tradition for me and my friends, but that's definitely not happening this year.
Okay, so the government or the towns or the communities, they're not doing fireworks.
Yeah,
right.
They are not. Nope. From what I know, from what I've heard.
Well, Austin, we do have to wrap this up, but I was wondering if you had a short poem you wanted to read before
sure.
Before we go
Definitely.
off.
Let me see. What kind of poem? I have tons of poems. Because I actually, if you'd like me to talk real quick about I have a new book coming out next week on March 7th. And it's called Celestial Nightlight. And it's going to be free to download from Ghost City Press. And all tips are going to be donated to Black Lives Matter. So if you want to read some free poetry, and I'll read a poem from there.
All right.
Since we've been talking about the virus, this is a poem I wrote while quarantined. It's called Day 27 of Quarantine.
Oh, okay.
I stand in my bathrobe on the front porch with my coffee. I take out my flask and return it to my pocket as if I were a kid again, and everything bad had to be a race. I watch my neighbor stand in her bathrobe across the street, staring at the empty road between us. It makes me sad to think that people are dying every day because of this, and I'm getting drunk in the mornings. I miss hugging people. I wonder if Oprah would call that selfish. Last night, I dreamt I was a dog. I don't remember if I was a Great Dane, a Golden Retriever, or a Cocker Spaniel, but I suppose you can't always know who you are when you're consumed by a search for serotonin. I bounced through the sunny neighborhood with my tail wagging and my ears perked. I chased rabbits, pissed on trash cans, and moved from house to house being snuggled and loved by mothers, fathers, and children. They fed me half-eaten salmon under their dining room tables, and I think I understood why humans don't want to be human sometimes. At night, I cooked chili. I fed chili and gin for 26 straight nights. Why should I change it up now? If I were living in a game show, I'd be pretty damn close to having green slime poured over my head. I walk around the little apartment and press play on all the cassette players I've hidden from room to room. Above the stove, Aunt Louise wants another slice of pie. Between the sofa cushions, my mother yells at my little brother to pick up his dirty socks. Out on the balcony, I hear Grandma's fist on a bathroom door, and I know my cousin is throwing up in the bathtub. I close my eyes as the voices sink into a rhythm. I feel like I've tripped on a Hot Wheels track and stumbled back into my childhood bedroom, some sort of world I can still understand. I take a deep breath, sit back in my chair, and spoon chili into my mouth. The kids are playing Sandman in the backyard, and I know it's neither light or dark outside. I take a sip of gin from my glass, and for a split second, I've almost convinced myself they're all really there. Thank you.
Wow. Gin and chili sounds absolutely nauseating, though.
Yeah, that's the combination I wanted to. Something kind of disgusting.
Oh, God. Just the thought of that. I mean, I hate gin anyways, but you know, to put it with chili, it's like...
Yeah. I wanted to make it this kind of surreal, strange world where the gross is good and, you know, the sad is melancholy. I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I liked it. I was having, while you were talking, my mind was picturing all of this going on, and very interesting. And then you were talking about the dogs, and I've got 2 dogs right here in my studio. They always, they come in with me and they fall asleep the instant I start talking.
So, that's so funny. That's cute.
Yeah, they're right here on the floor. They've only upset 1 interview in 5 years, so I'm pretty proud of them.
That is very impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
If I were a dog, I'd be barking all over the place right now, but you know.
These guys, they just come in here and they boom, right on the floor and they're gone. Anyways, Austin, we got to wrap this up. Thanks so much. This was fun. I enjoyed having you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And give us your website.
My website is austindavispoetry.weebly.com, and you can find me on Instagram at AustinWDavis1.
Thanks again for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.